Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Andy Potter.
Hello.
Ali Martin.
Hey.
And Dylan Hysen.
Hello.
Today we have a special podcast in store for you guys. We all saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Some of us saw it yesterday, some of us saw it just a couple hours ago, and we are going to be giving our initial reactions to the movie. I want to make it clear, this movie is officially coming out next week, but we are going to dive into spoilers. We will start off with a non-spoiler discussion, and I will warn you before we start the spoiler section, but if you want to know absolutely nothing of this movie before you watch, don't listen to this. Not yet. Go watch the movie first, then come back. I promise you we won't be going anywhere. You can find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, where we appreciate your star ratings, or search for Overly Animated on your favorite podcatcher. Okay, let's just go. What did you guys think of this movie?
So good.
It was a really, really good movie. I love Spider-Man. I think anyone who knows me knows I love Spider-Man, and this was just everything I could have hoped for.
Dylan, what'd you think?
Big fan of the movie. Not a big Spider-Man fan like Andy. Not that I'm anti-Spider-Man, but we have the Spider-Man stan here perspective, and then I am not a comics person, and I still really enjoyed this. This was pretty fantastic.
Amazing. Ali, where do you fall in the Spider-Man liking
pretty much
spectrum?
Well, same. I loved it, and I'm pretty much in the middle. I'm not like huge comic reader, but I love Spider-Man. He was my favorite superhero growing up, and I was excited to watch it, and it just went above my expectations, really. It was great.
What were your expectations going into this? Like, I'm assuming everybody had seen the promotion leading up to the movie. So, like, what were you expecting going in, and did the movie match it or surpass it or not? I want to go with Dylan first, because I want to know your expectations. You're not the biggest super Marvel fan, so I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, in general, Marvel, and not that this is a Marvel, I guess Marvel, but not Disney movie.
It's Marvel,
weird.
but it's not Disney.
Yeah. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. But even in general, Marvel movies don't have the highest expectations, but this movie, very, very high expectations because of how they're promoting it, which is like early screenings, release 1 million clips, and also, it has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and is getting universal acclaim. And we've just been really hype about it in our community. So, rare. I think this is a rare movie where the expectations are very high, and yet it definitely meets them.
Awesome. What about you, Ali? What did you think?
I was kind of, to be honest, expecting all of the spider people to be like more annoying than they were, for starters, and then they were just really like everything was entertaining, and like the heart of the film wasn't lost in that, which I kind of expected, and I was just very pleased. And the animation was great, which I was expecting it to be. The voice acting was great. Music was lit, and everything was just good. I kind of just thought it was going to be fair, but it was really good.
Cool. And Andy?
I was definitely wrapped up, and I was following all of it because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I was following every review, every clip. Like, I stopped watching some of the clips like a couple days ago because there were so many of them. They didn't need to upload as many as they did. But I was just really hyped for this movie, and I went in with expectations, but luckily my expectations were for, I think, a different movie than I was expecting. Because we've had a lot of crazy superhero movies like Infinity War this year, and this is not like Infinity War. This is a lot more grounded, a lot more personal, and I really, really love that style of comic book movie, and I just really loved this.
Yeah, it's a lot better than Infinity War. That's what it is.
Yeah.
We won't get into it. I mean, look, Infinity War is this other thing. It's another thing. Yeah. It's something else. Okay. Anyway.
Another better thing.
Neither is better or worse. They're different.
All I'm trying to say is that this isn't an MCU movie, not just by like the fact that it isn't, but just that it's a very different tone. It's a very different type of movie.
I will say I feel like the closest MCU movie to this would be Iron Man. I feel would be like the origin story, but the one that they did right.
I don't know. This is just so different, Beatriz.
It is. I mean, I feel like
in terms of an origin story, though, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of personal origin story about the hero journey, whatever. Anyway, point is, I was nervous because everything looks so good. Everything was just so good, and I was like, oh, what if? I was just waiting for the moment where things would go bad, or how they're not even superhero movies, but just in animation movies, there's just there is always this moment with these big productions where it lulls a bit, where, I mean, it's just the Disney Pixar formula where they always have that one moment that's just very awkward and then you don't get it. And it didn't have it. And I just thought this is what animation should be. It should be multiple things, not everything owned by Disney, and all of it being like pushing animation to its limit and doing the best. And I hate monopolies, and the mouse makes me cringe.
I'm with you there.
Like Beatrice, this movie is like, it completely takes advantage of the fact that it's an animated movie. There's so much here that could not have been done.
That's what they have to do. It's so perfect.
I mean,
more movies need to take this as an example.
I mean, it kind of and this is going to be, especially if you've heard that podcast, you know that I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie, but in terms of what they managed to do with the animation, it reminded me of Captain Underpants, where they managed to take the style of that comic and they started to play with the form and the medium and started pushing it to see what it can do and doing different styles. And that's something that this movie does. And that's something I see a lot of in like, I don't know, in anime I see it a lot, but here in Western animation I don't see it as much as I should, and I feel like it's because animation just kind of has at least Western animation has kind of lulled. It's kind of just not, at least in movies. I don't know about TV, but in movies they don't push the limits anymore. They've gotten it's crazy. It's like in some ways they're like, oh yes, but look at the hair of this thing. It looks so real or whatever, and it's like, yeah, but everything, you're not really pushing it. Like, you're not really pushing what animation can do. And the last time I think I saw that was either with Captain Underpants or with a completely different movie, which is the Tale of Princess Kaguya, which was another
a while ago.
A while ago, but it was doing something different where they did sketch it. It looked like a sketch versus an actual thing.
In terms of American animation, I agree with what you're saying. I think this is like the big talking point for me, us being an animation site. Like, this is just so visually refreshing compared to the last few years' slate of American animated films, which is why, like, I think this might be, there's like at least the best since Coco American animated film, and like, it's up there with it. It's so visually distinctive from the typical style that you see, and it's like a combination of this film just being incredibly visually distinctive, and the rest of the typical big budget American animated movies kind of all looking very homogenous. That it's such a huge difference that this just leaps out at you in every way. This movie does so many things interesting visually. And the general thing is that it is like a moving comic book, like in a way that we have really never seen before. And it takes that to the extreme, but it also just has incredible use of color and color palettes throughout the movie. And just in general, like it feels so refreshing, I think largely because of its animation.
Yeah.
Even with the extremes, there are like little subtleties too with the like comic book, like, I don't know, not, when people are talking, there's like little lines and stuff, and that was just is perfect.
I didn't expect like the comic like thinking, as I don't know, a little bit of a spoiler, but the comic like thinking boxes above people's heads, and there's like onomatopoeias throughout when people are falling and stuff.
Yeah, totally. I do have one question. Well, I guess it's two-part. Let's start with one positive, which is, how insane were these animators? Like, are they okay? Are they alive? Sleep? Are they sleeping? Are they like, how is the self-care?
There is some shots at the end of this movie I'm not going to say anything about it, but in the third act, there are some shots that are animated that just, it's insane the work they put into some of those shots, because they're just like, I wasn't even in a 3D theater, and I was getting like vertigo. I was getting like dizzy. Like, there was some crazy stuff happening on screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean there's 3 directors for this movie, so that should tell you.
I think that's the right way to go with this kind of thing, especially because it's multiverse story.
Yeah, not just that, but it also, and this is something I always love to see. It just kind of screams. I think the most recent movie, it's not animated, but that I saw this with was Baby Driver, which is, you can see the passion and the vision of the film, and just the sheer fun. It was completely hard, and it's like a migraine in terms of like making the movie, but you can tell that the people making it like really cared and were really pushing it because they loved the material. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of, I love when I see the hard work on screen, and I'm like, yeah, but they bled And so they bled, but they were happy to bleed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, Baby Driver not animated, but it was like shot by shot storyboarded out beforehand. So I do think it's like an interesting comparison. But yeah, both movies like very intricately crafted. That's very apparent.
Yeah. Okay, so one question that I do have, because I walked out of that movie and I got a headache. So one thing, and this is kind of interesting. Do you guys think at times it could cause seizures? Like, that is something I did worry about watching it, because I was like, there was a lot of flashing, there is a lot of color. And sometimes I was like, well, can everyone see this movie?
I would actually be worried about that. There are some parts in definitely the latter half that I would be concerned. If you're worried about having seizures or of epilepsy, like, I'd be concerned. Yeah. Maybe just watch out for that. Yeah,
my vision's always like bad, so I know that I would always have a headache and whenever I go see a movie. But I don't know. I'm just, for people who want to see it but maybe are worried about that, I would like look into it.
It's a lot of flashing, like red and light red colors.
Yeah, and it's not white. It's not like the white flash, but it's still like enough where I was like, ooh, like, have they checked that this is okay?
It's definitely not as bad as Incredibles 2.
No, oh my God.
No, thank God.
But it's just be aware of it before going to see this movie.
No, yeah, totally. So let's talk about I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but let's talk about like how they handled the origin story, because this is something. One, it's Spider-Man, so we know it's like Spider-Man and Batman. We don't need to hear the origin stories anymore. Like, we really don't. But they kind of had to do it again with this, and they did it multiple times, and they made it into this very fresh kind of, not necessarily fresh, but they kind of were like, okay, we're going to tell this one more time. No, okay, now one more time.
Yeah, I think that would be, for me, that would be more spoiler section, getting into that, I think.
All right, yeah. We'll move on. Well, okay.
But it's to me, I was like shocked by the way the movie opened, honestly. I don't know if they released that clip, but I thought they were going to start at different points. That was even a little bit of a spoiler, the literal first shot.
Okay,
it was so, like, the movie started, and I thought I missed like 5. I thought there was a scene missing, because it just went. It just started. The movie like hits the ground running, and it just does not stop.
Yeah. I mean, well, I will say, and I really appreciate in terms of the marketing, is that a lot of the clips that we see that are open to everybody happen very early in the movie, and I don't think that's a spoiler to say that. I just think it's like, that's a good thing. It means that like you won't be bored, or you don't have to be worried that the marketing spoiled too much, because a lot of it was like, it's like in the first, 15 minutes, you already get it, and then you move on. So I think that was a very smart thing. And
some clips that were in advertisements weren't even in the movie. Like, it was just to like explain what the movie was about. Like, wasn't there to make things, I don't know, easier for not dialogue, but like purpose. I don't know what.
Yeah, I think from some of these early clips you get, and like another non-spoiler point you can make is you get a sense of the movie's great characterization, which I think is other than the visually standing out, it's what really jumps out at me. The characterization of Miles specifically, and like the relationships he has with his family. A lot of that comes early on and is touched upon throughout the entire movie. Definitely a big highlight.
And I also think that it's important to note that a lot of the clips that are put online have been edited, and I won't say what they've been edited. Like, parts of the scenes are missing online in the clips they've uploaded, and from pretty much all of them, I went back and looked, and they hide away a lot of characterization, a lot of important plot moments. So even these early scenes, they're different. The context is sometimes different than before, even if you have seen the scene before.
Yeah. So basically, you can watch all the scenes. You're safe. You're fine. And something I did very briefly before we get to spoilers, because this isn't necessarily like something I want to just deeply dive into, but because this is a reaction pod, I just want to react. Miles is speaking Spanish, you guys! He's speaking Spanish!
I was kind of really worried that they wouldn't include that part, and I was very happy that they did.
No, and I just love how, like, they don't translate anything. They just let it be, you know
and
what I
they
mean?
Don't shy away from, like, letting it be, which is good.
It's just, and I was just like, oh yes, I mean, like, and it works really well in terms of how, because he is a he's like third. I'm assuming he's like third, fourth, he's fifth generation. So his Spanish isn't perfect, but that fits with the context. Like sometimes something that bothers me is that people don't get the nuances with Latinx folk. Like they like, for instance, like my Spanish is obviously going to be a lot better than someone else's Spanish because I'm a first generation here. But then they don't take that into account sometimes, and it's like the fact that they did, and like it was so good, and I was like that in itself, I had like a moment. It all like I was going through a lot. Like I was stressed from school. The guy next to me smelled really bad. But then that happened, and I was just like, you know what? It's all worth it for that one magical moment. And again, we also don't get a lot of Afro Latinx folk like being shown on screen and being celebrated the way that they are, and the fact that it was, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting emotional. It was so good. So yeah, I just had to let that out.
I knew you were gonna be so happy about that, Beatriz, when I saw it. Like I just knew you were screaming.
Oh, honey. Like, there was a lot of, there's a lot of screaming in my theater. I thankfully was mature enough to not be an adult screaming in a theater, but it was great. It was fantastic.
Who are the shots fired at?
At adults who scream at theaters. It's like, you don't need to scream. There's just a scream. Like,
I think the movie like is very racially diverse and embraces who Miles is as a person, and that just absolutely shines throughout the movie. It's just a very diverse movie on top of everything else. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm glad they kept that part, because if they didn't, there would be riots in the streets.
Yeah, there would.
They really separated him from because this needed to be Miles instead of Peter Parker to be the main character. They really separate him from all these other Spider-Man movies that have happened, and because Miles he just feels like such a breath of fresh air for this franchise. Like,
you don't want a sixth white boy Peter Parker?
No. Because,
this is like a long time coming.
Well,
we've needed this for a long time.
But here's a question, and this is something because I'm pretty familiar with this, but was anyone like not familiar with Miles, with the store, with the comics?
Yeah,
like,
I know like nothing about him. Yeah.
Okay, well, were you ever lost, or did they do a good job in kind of taking you through it all?
Yeah, no, I never felt lost with anything involving him.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I more just want to know what was different, like the nuances.
We can maybe talk about that in spoilers,
yeah,
because there were a couple differences, but I think the changes they made were good.
Yeah, I mean, it was very faithful. I think that was what shocked me. It was how faithful it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So, do we want to move into spoilers, or can we talk about villains?
No. Let's get into spoilers.
There's
a lot of twists in this movie. There's small ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we do, though, let's mention one thing. I can't wait for that soundtrack to drop.
Oh,
it's just A+ soundtrack. It was so good.
I was so confused when they dropped that Post Malone song, like that music video for this movie, and I was like, why, like, it was cool. It was a really good song. It was a really cool video, but I was like confused why they were doing it. And after watching this movie, I'm like, wow, like I understand now, because the soundtrack is it's like almost a character in this movie, the soundtrack. It's almost like Miles's like background music, like in his headphones, like in his ears all the time. It's really
it works so well.
Yeah,
well, I want to highlight Sunflower too by that Post Malone Swally. It's in the beginning of the movie, like one of the first scenes as he's listening to one of my favorite scenes of the movie. And then it's like used twice more in the movie. It's just really fantastic.
And I just want to say also, like, this kind of shows that you can have music as in like people singing in the song. It doesn't have to be orchestral music for it to really add a mood, because sometimes I feel like if you actually have a soundtrack instead of a score, people like it sometimes can come off as cheesy, sometimes it can take you out of the movie. But this is a great example of that not happening, of them actually taking the time to make and I think all these songs were made for the movie. At least a lot of them were made for the movie and with the movie in mind. So it's kind of like that. I think Black Panther is another good example. I think what's another good example? Like Baby Driver again is another good example of choosing songs that would fit with the movie and create an ambiance, and aren't just there for the sake of saying with new music by Mariah Carey. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, the movie fits who Miles is as a person.
Exactly.
I think the soundtrack does. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, we've come to that point where we're gonna go into spoilers. Don't listen in. Leave.
Go to bed.
Go to bed. Wake up. Like, I don't know what time it is for you. Like, it might be morning for you. Like, maybe you're drinking coffee.
Go back to bed.
Go back to bed. Exactly. Why are you awake? So yeah, go away. We're gonna start spoilers. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's talk about these villains, you guys.
Henry too.
There's a lot of villains and a lot of characters in this
Oh,
movie.
there's
But,
so
like,
many characters. Yeah.
There's also good though.
I just want to really quickly just take this moment to just appreciate the design for Kingpin.
Oh man.
Like his design, there's a moment where he gets out of a car, but you don't actually see him get out of the car, and the car is way too small for this man.
It's like
It
when
is
you don't see
way
him get
too
into
small.
the train either.
And I was like, this is fantastic.
But the Kingpin is like the perfect example of something you can't do in live action.
Exactly.
He works so well in this movie. His weird body shape, and he's so big and imposing, but he just looked dumb if it was live action. I love him so much.
And Andy, is this how this character looks in the comics?
Yeah,
Because it is.
he's a little more like his head's a little lower in this one, but he generally looks really blocky and really big.
Okay, yeah, because it's the first time you see him. It's like very striking how over the top that this character's design is. That's like the first. This movie has some crazy over the top elements, but that's the first one I think that you see like right off the bat.
I wasn't shocked just because I played the video game and there was a big dude in that too, but it was a different guy, I think.
No, it was him, but he had a more quote unquote realistic design in the video game. Like he was more.
But he was going by a different name too.
Oh, they were calling him Fisk in the.
But that's his real name. Like that's
Yeah.
like Kingpin and Fisk is his real name. But what's something that I love is also like at the end when he goes up against Miles, like something, and you kind of see they talked about it in Daredevil and how they wanted to give it like how like Daredevil is like so tiny in comparison to Vincent D'Onofrio. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but in this one, like you really get that sense of like this is a little kid going up against this like huge guy, and the way that just played out, and it really just I don't know, it was beautiful, and it's something that I just didn't think I would see. Like, again, Spider-Man is often very, like, adultish. I don't know. I don't think we should see Kingpin in normal Peter Parker, not normal, but MCU Peter Parker. But point is, like, this is it. This is like, oh my God, Kingpin was just great. And before we move on from Kingpin, question, like, and this is where time comes in very confusingly. So did he, through him creating that, like, universal machine 3-actor thing, like, did he, like, when they saw him, were they watching him in that flashback, or were they actually seeing him against Miles, or was it, like, an echo thing? Like,
which part of the movie are you talking about? I'm sorry,
okay,
Beatriz.
you know that they were in the subway. It was him and Miles in the subway. And then he's holding him like he did with Peter. Remember?
Oh,
my question is, was that like some sort of like time thing where like he was
with his son and his wife?
Right. So I'm like, did he just like he trying to fix it create the very problem that he does that? You know how sometimes with time travel, like that story about the guy who tried to like go like it's like
I did not get that impression.
It's not time
travel. I didn't get it either.
It's multi-dimension travel, so I didn't really get that vibe.
I thought well. Gwen time traveled in the movie because Gwen just happened to time travel in this movie and it never really is expanded upon. But
yes, I was very confused.
Yes, she did.
Never mind.
Yeah,
well, I thought that was like a metaphorical term, is what she was saying.
Yeah,
like she came earlier before the thing happened. She was already there before, like the initial before that universe's Peter died.
Oh, that's
everyone
true.
Wait, she did?
She was there.
I didn't think about it. Yeah. So we thought there were going to be two Gwens in the movie, but it's actually just.
But they actually mentioned it. They mentioned that earthquake in the opening scene. Dylan.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was obvious.
Well, there was a second earthquake before they actually had
so there must have been like from a previous like.
That's when Gwen arrived. That's when Gwen got there because she arrived in that first earthquake.
Initial. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
At least that's my understanding. It was kind of confusing because there's a lot of heady physics stuff happening.
Everybody arrived at the same time.
No,
she had to have come before all the Spider-Men because she was his classmate, and that turns out she was just pretending to be normal.
In the school though, if she was just pretending to be a student, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, but then it's also. I mean, and I don't know, like her excuse was like, oh, like my spidey senses told me to go here. And I'm like, is that how spidey senses work?
Well, I think in this movie they were trying to say that the spidey sense attracts them to other people with spidey sense. I think that's
but that's the thing. It's like he wasn't bitten before when she was attracted to him. You know what I mean? Yeah. He hadn't been bitten yet. So I'm like, well then wait, how did she know to go to that school?
It doesn't matter. That's all I have to say.
Speaking of spidey sense, I think that was another distinctive visual thing in this movie was the way it was represented with and that was like a very big part of the movie, like the most literal, I think, representation we've gotten of that.
It was great.
I don't know. It's like the video games are the same.
I think that's kind of like the way this movie is, though. It's just like every time it tries to do something, it tries to do something interesting. It just takes the most literal route, and I think the movie is so much better for that. Like anytime they just have like Miles gets bit, and then all of a sudden he has speech bubbles because he's a comic book superhero now, and like that's just like it's like they went through all these ideas maybe, and they're just like, wait, let's just do the most basic one, and it just works so well. Like there's no reason to do anything more fancy than that. Just do the thing that people expect, and they just do it in interesting ways.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
I don't know if I would call it basic. I would say it's just the most comic booky thing.
Yeah.
Versus basic. Like I think for me it's more of with like live action, they've tried so hard to make it as realistic as possible, right?
Yeah.
And try to explain the science behind it. Where in this case they're like, no, it's just a comic book. Like let's just take it from the actual comic book and not change it much because they can do that.
Maybe basic is the wrong word. I mean more like the most like you boil things down to what is a comic book, and this is like these are like this is the bread and butter. Like you expect these things, and they've been, like you said, they've been trying to do all these like fancy ways to show off these things. Like they've tried so hard to like show like Spidey sense in like the Tobey Maguire movies where it's like hair stood up on his arm, and this one's like, no, let's just show like squiggles around their head. The audience is allowed to we're allowed to see stuff like that. It doesn't take anything away from the movie that we saw those things. It added to it.
Yeah,
I
think that's a big aspect of this movie is it embraces being a comic book, like on all the aspects of that more than anything we've seen. And this gets back to something Beatriz was saying before with these Spider-Man introduction segments that we start the movie with the Dead Spider-Mans one, and then we get them throughout with each of their introductions at the same time. Eventually you get the three of them at the same thing, and then like it culminates with like their comic book. Like we literally see comics on the screen and you see their issues like being made, and that's like a part of the plot and stuff. It's a little surreal, I think, to see actual comics as part of a comic book movie.
But it's so satisfying when Miles' comic comes down at the end. Like it feels like such
that was a great moment. Yeah,
totally. And I think it's just again like going into like the treatment of the origin story. They managed to say it because it's just there are conventions to this type of story. There are moments where you have to go through this thing to do the next. Like it's the hero's journey again and again, and it never gets tired. We never get tired of it. But they managed to say it with such. They managed to make it feel fresh, which I think is the big thing, and the thing that's so impossible. That seems so impossible with a hero like Spider-Man because we have seen his story so many times.
Too many
times. But they definitely wrote this movie knowing that. Like they knew everyone coming into this movie.
Totally.
And that's what makes it so great, because I think of all the Spider-Man movies, like even including live action ones, this one really gets across better than all of them. Like
I agree.
Just the idea that Spider-Man isn't this origin story. He's this guy that just saves people, and he has this trauma, and he has these morals, and it doesn't matter who they are under the mask, and no other movie gets that across any better than this one, because you really get why all these people understand each other, even though they're all completely different, and it's impressive. I'm so amazed, like that scene when they're in Miles's room at the school, and they all say like, "We understand you, Miles. We're the only people that can understand you." Like that hits home so well. And it's amazing considering they're all just there's a cartoon pig there, and but it fits. It all makes sense, and it's crazy good. I can't believe they pulled this off.
I think something along those lines. This all the Spider-Man movies try to start like at the beginning of the comics, I feel, and this movie is like picks up where we are now. Like it's like, okay, this is the new Spider-Man. We're embracing all of the previous mythology. And I think along this line, another talking point is that this movie is like it's so inside baseball with the comics. It's for someone like me who's not at all reading the comics. It's very jarring just seeing like literal comics on the screen, all these devices, and then even getting into these over-the-top elements with the multiverse that jumps right into that, and then like these three later Spider-Men that are introduced, including the pig, and it's kind of nuts that they do all of this in like this big budget mainstream movie. I think it is mostly successful, but at the same, it definitely has an effect on someone who's not familiar with it. Like, what is happening?
There were definitely times, even as like I loved Spider-Man, Dylan, there were definitely times I thought the movie was moving a little too quickly, especially when they introduced the three Spider-Men in at Aunt May's house. Like that was like they just like flew through that, and it just I could tell there are people in my audience that just like they were lost a little bit because they were telling 3 origin stories at the same exact time.
I don't know, but I feel like it works. Because, for instance, like, I wasn't familiar with any of those 3 Spider-Men or people. Yeah. I wasn't familiar with any of them. But, like, this is one of those cases where because they relied on you knowing the story of Spider-Man, that they're like, it doesn't matter who it is. It's like, it's the same beat, right?
Yeah.
It's the same story. So it came to the point, and I mean, it came to a point where it didn't matter. It could have been like anyone. It could have been this, I don't know. It didn't matter who it was. It still, I feel like they didn't need to slow down and go individually to each one of them and be like, yes, tell me more about your life story. I feel like because again, and neither of them, well, I think one of them was Peter Parker, like the Nicolas Cage version Peter Parker.
I think he was, but it was never really expanded upon.
But what I mean is like like none of them like we didn't need to go super, super deep into them. I feel it was fine. And also it's a pretty long movie, despite the fact that it like flies.
It really flies by.
I feel like in terms of pacing, like had they done that, I feel like it would have slowed down the pacing and slowed down the groove of it.
And I also think more importantly is that it would have taken away from Miles more. I think because there were a lot of concessions made for these other Spider people, so that they didn't have huge amount of time. Some of them, which I think is okay, because there were concessions made so that Miles remains the focus no matter where we are in the story, and I think that's great that they did that.
I was also worried that they would be too focused on everybody else and kind of go away from Miles too much, but he really he never had the show stolen from him.
Yeah,
that's a good point. He remains the focus. Yeah, I think introducing the 3 of them at the same time was a good call. And the purpose of those characters, they're just representations for any Spider-Man. I think given that we're using them, I think that they were executed wonderfully. I do question why we needed Peter Parker, Penny Parker, and Spider Noir. That was a little, especially the pig. It was too much for me. I think the execution was pretty flawless, given that they're in the story. I'm just not sure why they were chosen as the 3 representations of Spider-Man.
I agree.
Just for humor. Spider-Ham was chosen because I think he's like, some fans like Spider-Ham.
Comedy relief.
Yeah, and Spider-Man Noir is also a big deal. Penny Parker, though, Dylan, I like that she's there, that we have another girl.
That's the most bizarre one somehow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that one I know nothing about, to be honest.
Get in the robot, Penny.
Yeah, honestly, Penny Parker is like a great parody of like a lot of different tropes of anime at once.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
And they did it like surprisingly well and not super cringy.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie, Dylan, is that scene where Penny is like has the spider on her shoulder, and it's that she's crying over the robot being destroyed, and that's like she has the anime eyes, and she's crying. It's so amazing. It makes no sense, but I love it so much.
Yeah, I feel it's possible that if you take those type of elements away. You guys were loving Kingpin's design. That was also a little bit on the over the top side for me. That was like lesser than these other ones, but I feel like I wonder if you take the over the top elements away, if the movie is what it is, or if it like maybe, because I feel like without Peter Parker, it's better, but I don't know, because it is such a specific thing that it ends up being, and it's so good that it's hard to question it too much.
Because I think that a lot of these elements, Dylan, they probably are like from the other, like you said, there's 3 directors, like Beatriz said, there's 3 directors. Like some of these things could have just been like they're all just throwing stuff at the wall and just like trying to mix it all together.
Okay, I think it was meticulously crafted with the choices of who they
That's
are.
right. I'm saying it wrong. I misspoke. What I'm trying to say is that they chose a lot of things and they mixed them together to make this thing happen, and I'm not sure if what you can take away to keep that mixture being this.
Definitely what it arrives at is really great. But yeah, I don't know. John Mulaney was great, but this Spider-Ham was
That's who it was. I was like, who voices
him?
him? That's who it was.
He's just doing.
I don't think it would have been better or worse, but it would have felt kind of not like empty, but just.
Yeah, maybe it feels less zany and less fun. I don't know.
Humor-wise, it would have been lacking. Maybe.
Because my pitch would have been 3 more, like, because there's other alternate universe
3
ones,
more white
specifically
Spider-Man.
Gwen. No, like 3 people like Gwen, like normal ones. Like these are like crazy mutations of Spider-Man. But
I feel like they needed the crazy, because Gwen and Peter B. Parker were the normal ones.
Exactly.
So you already had 2, like with Miles, that's like 3 normal ones and then 3 crazy ones. I feel like that's a good balance.
And Dylan, you did miss. There was another Spider person.
Oh yeah, and there was another Spider person that we'll talk about it. Oh,
yeah, I'm sure.
It's a lucky number.
Oh no, Dylan, you did. It's amazing, Beatriz. I was so excited when I saw it. It was amazing.
Okay, but not
then
that.
Wait,
but
technically, weren't there 8 because somebody spoilers dies?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yes. You're right. There were 8.
The original.
Yeah, so basically the normal ones outnumber the crazy ones.
Yeah, I mean, we also maybe didn't need that many, but who knows?
Who knows? What did you guys think of Doc Ock? I just want to very quickly.
That was probably my favorite moment of the favorite twist of the entire movie. Just revealing that was Doc Ock. Like, oh my god, this is great. Like, that we have this woman Doc Ock in this movie.
My enemies call me Doc Ock.
Oh my god.
Yeah, is that a real character in the comic?
No, this is just a thing they did.
That was new.
That felt like an incredible subversion
loved
of the
it.
typical male. Yeah.
I think maybe in Beatriz, I might be wrong, but I think Doc Ock might be a woman in Spider-Gwen, but I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, definitely not in I don't know about Spider-Gwen, but definitely for Miles, it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It wasn't. Miles. So everyone wasn't no one was expecting. Everyone was like, wait, what? So, I mean, that was a beautiful moment. And I love how her claws are like plasticky. They're not metal. And it's just the design. I was like, oh my god. And in a way, I'm like, that makes so much better sense. Like, she's such a better Doc Ock because she uses she's just smarter.
She's energy conserving Doc Ock.
Exactly. I was like, you're so much smarter. You're amazing.
Those arms are so weird. Like, they look so soft and so light, but they're so she can lift these things with them, and it's
like an actual octopus.
Yeah, they're so flexible, and like again, this is something you can only do in animation to make these things look intimidating, but also be so noodly as they are. They're so cool. I love her design.
They were so ridiculous, and this just makes way more sense.
Oh, they're so
all around.
I'm calling it now. She's gonna appear in a comic book.
Oh,
really?
They're gonna take her, and they're like, "That's too good. We need to put it in a comic book."
She is really.
I cannot see there is this wonderful synergy back and forth. I'm like, they're doing it. They're totally gonna bring her in. So I need to talk about something with you guys. I need to make a case that there was a gay moment with Gwen in this movie.
Okay.
I need to make the case. So, when Peter B. Parker was looking at MJ and he was like, oh my god, and she's like, Peter, don't. Peter, don't.
I knew where you were going with this.
She was like,
because I also thought the same thing.
She was like, trust me, I get it. Don't. And it's like, what do you get, Gwen? What do you mean, what do you get?
She said, I've been there. So it's where have you been, girl?
And it's like, MJ, you've been there with MJ? She's look, Gwen is a bi queen, and that's all I'm gonna say.
Beatriz, I give you this moment, but I think what she was saying was that she's been around her Peter died. She's saying that she's been around someone she's lost from another dimension.
That was also what I assumed.
Yeah, I think she's meant that she's.
But also, there is that other subtle layer of I've been there. I know how MJ is. Trust me, I've been there.
Are they in the same universe, her and MJ?
Yeah, there's isn't it? MJ's part of her band.
Okay, cool.
Well, they didn't show any MJs in her flashback origin story, but I assume there's an MJ in her world because there's a Peter Parker in her world that's dead.
Yeah. And I mean, something else I do want to say, I was very. Again, this is Miles' story, so I understand. But also, if they were going to talk about all these previous universes, Peter B. Parker, I'm assuming isn't he the Peter Parker, the original Peter Parker?
That was also what I assumed because in the original, he and MJ get divorced too, right?
Right. Yeah. Totally. So that's why I was like, well, in the original, Gwen dies because of Peter. So shouldn't he also feel a little bit of oh my god, Gwen,
Sorry about that one time.
They're playing very fast and loose here, Beatrice, and I mean that in a good way. They take things they need for the story to keep moving, and I'm fine with that.
All I'm saying is they could have just easily had a moment where he he's he just seems just shocked. He's like, oh my god, Gwen, you're alive.
But I think that they fit so much in here. I don't think they can do that. I think they need to keep one motivation for each of these other spider people that aren't Miles, or the movie just slows to a crawl.
I'm not asking for an entire scene. All I ask is for a shot, or literally of him looking at her being like, oh my god. That takes a second. I'm saying.
Oh, you're saying you wanted something in Gwen's flashback where you see the silhouette of the lizard or whatever.
Oh, not even. No. I mean Peter B. Parker seeing in his flashback, just recognizing that he also cared about Gwen at one point. Well, no. So it could be one. I don't need Gwen's Peter. I need Peter's.
No. What Peter I mean is that there's just a blink and you miss a thing that only the comic people might notice. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm lost here.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm just. Anyway,
I don't
worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Do you guys think Gwen and do you think Gwen and Miles are going to be like the new like Ray and Finn?
Yes.
Where people are like, oh, they got friend zone at the end, but it's like, but clearly like there was something there, and people are like, oh, we're just going to ignore it, but it's like, why? Don't ignore it. They're precious. And
I loved that they didn't culminate them romantically. It was fantastic.
I loved it too, but that's why I was like,
perfect.
That's why they're like Ray and Finn, where it's like you think that they are, but in the end, it's like, we're friends.
And that's what makes them so great.
And that's actually what they're like in the comics, too. They're very, like, I think there is a time in the comics where they do date, but overall, their relationship in the comics is very much just as friends who, like, work together sometimes. And I'm really glad that they captured that idea for them in this movie. Yeah. I really like that. I was really worried they were going to kiss before she jumped away. Like, I did not want that here. That just felt... It felt wrong for what
uncalled for.
I feel like they knew, like, I feel like the filmmakers like knew that, and they built it up as thinking like, oh, you think they're gonna kiss, you think, and it's like, nope, they're gonna just like take each other's hand and be like friends. And it's like, yeah, power of friendship, and it was just great. But
it was perfect.
It was just wonderful.
Before we move on, can I go back to something about Gwen? Because you were saying when she said, my spider sense told me to go here. I thought that was after, or at least the shot we saw of her looking at Miles behind her. I thought that was after he got bit. But you guys were saying he was not bit.
Well, she was in the school to begin with. Like, how did she get? She was there on
the one in the beginning that he like gets his hand stuck to her hair and stuff. That ends up being her.
Well, the part after that where she's talking about.
No, I'm talking about like we're talking about like when he's late for class before he's bit. And she's there.
Okay,
and he's like, she's a new girl. And then he talks to his Uncle Aaron, which we'll talk about. Uncle Aaron,
we haven't talked about him at all.
Like
he's
Uncle Aaron,
best part of the movie,
and Dad too, both of them.
Oh my God, his dad was my favorite.
How we not talked about the dad?
His dad was my favorite character.
And Aunt May, I'm sorry, Aunt May was beautiful.
Yeah,
she was.
I
like
love
all the adults in this movie, because usually a lot of times with like teenage characters, the adults tend to be either annoying or they're preventing things from happening. All the adults in this movie were wonderful.
They were.
And before because Aunt May has a smaller part than Miles' parent, father. Like, but Aunt May she like kind of was like Alfred here, and I really liked that. And I loved her
outside.
Yeah, and I really loved her like taking she took down Tombstone with a baseball bat. I love that so much.
Oh man, no, yeah, her seeing and then who was it? I think was it Spider-Ham just like throwing a plate down for no reason,
and then she's on his head while everything else was breaking.
Yeah, and then she's just seeing everything. She's just like out.
Out.
500% done with all of you. Get out of my house. Give me rent money.
No, it was so good. It was so good. But no, yeah, like I guess we'll talk about Aaron and then we'll move from Aaron to Miles's dad. But Aaron was so good.
Uncle
and it was such a
Ron.
And not just that, but like it was such a great chain. It's still Uncle, so like Peter had Uncle Ben, and then he has Uncle Aaron, but it was such a great change of that, change of pace, where it's like, yeah, but like he was bad, and it was like, oh, it was so good.
But he made up for it in the end, which was it was really satisfying.
And it was.
I was surprised that he was.
Me too.
The Prowler. I assumed this was a known thing, but
yeah, it was a known. This is how he was in the comic for Miles' origin story. Like this was part of his origin story.
I had no idea, but I guessed it half-ish way through, but I thought because in the comics he was a bank robber, right? And in this he just looked like a muscle kind of thing, so I was a little confused.
I think it's like they talk about how he's going out of town a few times. I think what's cool about that twist is that he's like presented as like lazy person or something. He's like slouching right, but actually he's doing he's like this cool hero guy or villain, but yeah,
hero guy.
And I just love how he was such, like, he always, like, encouraged Miles and was like, no, like, your creative outlet, like, he's like, let's just do this thing and whatever and, like, be, like, you know, and, like, it's just this great kind of parallel between him and Miles's dad, where it was this, they both want what's best for this kid, they both love this kid, but it's just, you know, it's like life choices have, like, led them down different paths and made them different people.
Like, perfect foils to each other, because in the beginning the uncle's like, I'll support your art, and then crap happens, and then the dad in the beginning is like, what is art? And then at the end he's like, you can hang some stuff up if you want at the office or whatever, and it was perfect. It was like full circle. A very sad one, but
it was almost Star Warsian, and like just how like there's a light side and a dark side, like he was like choosing between the two, and like and it was just and obviously it was about Miles like figuring out for himself what he wanted to do, but it was just so well constructed, like all these, because like his uncle was clearly like doing things that probably weren't for the best for Miles' future, but at the same time, you could tell he loved him, and you could tell that he saw this creative spark in Miles. Like, Miles, you're a great graffiti artist, and it was just, I understood that, like, just with the little time we had before he got bit, there was so much emotional attachment to his family, and I felt so many things for Miles when he found out his uncle was the Prowler. It was, it hit so well.
Yeah, I think the slice of life parts towards the beginning were some of my favorite ones.
Slice of life part.
Oh, God. The character moments.
I mean, there could be character moments in like action scenes. The him attending school, him hanging out with Aaron and stuff. Yeah, I thought all those were some potentially more successful than some of the action pieces later, and they're really great.
No, yeah, totally.
Action scenes also. I know we were talking about like speech bubbles before, but even like the boom plow onomatopoeias during the fight scenes were just like, they were really subtle and done very well. I thought they were going to be like kind of over the toppy.
Yeah, and I really loved like when they were like swinging and like they were going like thwip and release, thwip, release, and there was like little thwip words like next to the web shooters. Like it was just so, like you were saying, Dylan, this is like the most inside baseball comic movie ever. It's just like there's so many like references to things that just come in, they're on screen for a second, then they're gone.
Also, question: I don't know if in PlayStation 2 there was a Spider-Man game that was really good, but was it like double tap to release as well, or no? Am I making that up?
I think it might have been in GameCube.
Because I was like, that could have like I wouldn't be surprised if that also was the case. Because I was like, when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, that's probably a reference to like, I don't remember, but that's probably a reference to that.
Yeah,
maybe, I don't know. Anyway, there is one thing that kind of, well, again, his dad is amazing. We need to like acknowledge that his dad is wonderful. And so his last name is Morales. So his dad is also somewhat Latinx, right? No, I mean, his mom is, but like his dad isn't. But like, didn't he keep his dad's last name or no?
Maybe they didn't. Maybe they took on the mother's last name.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so when he is like tied up and everyone goes off and do you think that moment, one, it's like a really great like imagery wise, because it's like, like spiders, bugs, like cocoon, like he's in the cocoon, he's gonna break out and become the great butterfly he is. But do you think that he just kind of like, and this is something that in superhero movies this happens a lot, so this isn't like I mean, it's a problem, but it's fine because we're just so used to it. But didn't he become like too good too fast?
I think that's just I
it's a trope of the it's a trope of the story, and I like how they kind of mentioned, they're like, did you teach him that? No, I didn't teach him that. So it's kind of like, okay, like he kind of got a bit too good too fast, but that happens in like every.
Yeah, this is just this is Ray. This is just a frequent complaint. Like whatever. This is concessions to pacing. I'm completely fine with.
Yeah,
but again, no one's gonna complain about Miles because he's a boy.
Yeah.
Ray, everyone's like, but then with the boy,
I thought it fit kind of
okay.
well with like how he was interacting with his dad, at least from the beginning too, because you have the idea of, expectations from the beginning, and then, you assume, I mean, at least I assumed he wanted to make his parents proud, and, he wanted to find out what he wanted to do. And then every time when his dad came to the room, and even at the end when his dad was in like the little building during the crazy stuff in that whatever machine, like he just needed like that extra push from him each time, like maybe to do better. Not that he like improved every time, but I don't know. To me, it kind of made sense, even it was like cheesy and cheapish.
But I mean, like this whole movie's really cheesy. Like that's what this movie is. And if you don't want cheesy, like you're not gonna like this movie because it's
I don't think it's cheesy. It's just earnest.
Maybe campy.
I don't like the term cheesy. I think earnest is the better word for this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But yeah. Let's I don't know, Dylan, like did you not see the end credit scene?
No, I did not. Well, explain what I missed.
Yes, okay. Beatriz, explain it, please. This is the best thing ever.
All right, so we got one final like Spider-Man that like another iteration. This is like Spider-Man 20 something. What is it?
29.
29. I don't know the number, but
it's 2099. I'm saying it.
No, I love how Andy knows the number.
2099?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Spider-Man 2099, who's also Latinx, I think, right? Yes?
Yes. He's Miguel. His name is Miguel O'Hara.
Oh my god, I love Miguel. I love him already. But anyway, so he basically, you know that meme of Spider-Man where he's looking at the other Spider-Man and points from like the old animated series? So I saw the credits and they were like, thanks for letting us borrow this scene from the old animated series. And I was like, what scene? I didn't see it in the movie. And then it comes at the end. Because this guy, Miguel, he like goes and dives into that. Like he goes Mary Poppins and dives into that and goes like, and then they have the pointing match and it's funny.
Well, so Dylan, what happens is, long story short, what features crossing over is that Miguel, the future Spider-Man, sees that everybody else is dimension hopping, and he goes back and he says that he wants to go back in time and find all the Spider-Man. He wants to go back to the beginning, so he goes back to the '60s cartoon in the '60s cartoon style and recreates the stupid meme from everyone pointing at each other.
I'm glad I missed that.
I knew you would say that.
No, it was great. It was so good.
I absolutely would say that, and you're absolutely wrong.
Beatriz, my entire theater was rolling.
Oh yeah, we were having a ball. It was really, really, really good. And also ending, but not the end credit scene. Like Gwen is able to talk to Miles.
Yes,
right.
And that's like the allusion to the new thing, and I'm excited.
So, okay, because we know that there's going to be like a spinoff for Gwen.
Yeah, that was very abrupt at the end of the movie.
Not if you knew it was happening.
But I mean, the thing is, like, I didn't know that would happen. I thought it was just going to be like Gwen was going to have her own spinoff, and it was just her and her universe. And then I didn't know that
he might not be in it. We still don't know, right?
Yeah, we don't. But like, I don't understand is how this works, because like this rift, that means that they failed in some case. Like, is the time-space continuum safe is my question. Like,
probably never.
Yeah, it's a comic. Maybe we'll explore it if we do another movie. We'll see.
If we do, well, they're definitely
making another one.
They're definitely doing a sequel and a spinoff. So they also confirmed the sequel.
Oh yeah,
which is the sequel and which is the spinoff? Gwen is getting a spinoff movie or series?
It's unclear.
I thought it was that she was getting a movie, because the series it would be on Disney. Because there's already like a thing with Gwen on Disney.
Okay.
Oh, who knows? The point is that she's getting a spinoff.
No, yeah, I feel like it's definitely would be a movie.
But then there's probably. But then
so Joaquin Dos Santos, who we love, is doing the sequel, and then
yes,
Lauren Montgomery is doing the series about Spider-Woman. Which it's not clear if that's a show. It's not clear if it's a show or a movie. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. But the Voltron co-creators are following up on this. That's pretty fantastic.
Oh my god, that's kind of like that's so okay. One, like, oh man, like I was worried. I was like, how do you follow this up? This is so good. How do you follow this up?
In my opinion, Joaquin Dos Santos is like the best action scene storyboarder in America and American animation.
Can you imagine a fight scene in this style from Joaquin Dos Santos?
I can't imagine it. So that's yeah.
That's gonna be
I can't even imagine what we're gonna get from him for this.
That's gonna be amazing. Oh man, like
how many years do we have until that one?
Oh, that's probably gonna be like 5 years or something. It's gonna take a while, and I want them to take as long as they need.
By then we'll have animation holograms, so it'll be like 4D.
We'll see if this is successful, but Sony should push it. They seem to be very happy so far, at least with it. We'll see what their returns are.
I hope it's a problem because there's a lot of movies coming out and around this time, and I'm worried about this movie just because of that. But this one I hope it does well.
It's gonna do well.
I think it's gonna do well. Word of mouth has been really good, and people have been really excited about it. And Ralph, I don't think is like it matched up is completely to its hype. So I feel like the animated movie that could go up against Ralph, like I feel like if people had to pick, they'd pick Spider-Man over that, just in terms of brand. They'd rather go with a Spider-Man than with a Wreck-It Ralph.
It was just better, also.
It was, but like just in terms of like a parent, they're like, oh, we can actually have like a superhero. Like, would we go with Marvel? Would we go with like a Disney? We're probably gonna go with Marvel.
Yeah.
Unclear. Obviously, they're not clear that they're both that Disney technically owns Marvel. Doesn't matter. Okay, so last question from me. Do you think this movie has a shot for the Oscar? Since we're close?
Yes, because it's a big budget release, so it will get nominated, and probably Incredibles 2 will win, but I think it has a chance.
Why? This is so much better.
This is so much better than Incredibles 2.
I don't think Incredibles 2 is really good. I don't think it's like a lot better. But
I don't know.
It's a lot better.
I was bored with Incredibles 2. I thought it was a missed opportunity, but people can hear that on the Incredibles 2 podcast.
I think you were more positive then, but
okay. But I think this movie is Dylan with this movie. I think this movie has a much better, like just a thematic through line than Incredibles 2. I understood what the movie was trying to do the whole time. Incredibles 2 kind of lagged for me in a lot of places.
That's a good
This
point.
one just kept going.
And also, Incredibles 2 could have said something valuable about immigrants, but instead they decided to not say anything. So
This one had one thing it wanted. This movie had one thing it wanted to say, and it just said it over and over and over again. And each time it said it, it hit a little bit harder, and you understood it a little bit better. And it was just by the end, when Miles had the speech, the narration at the end, it just felt so good the way it was happening. It just you just understood all the emotion behind what he was saying, and it just worked so well.
Yeah, a few specific scenes I want to highlight before you. And there's the one Andy's talking about when we get him fully. His heroes coming, he becomes the hero moment. The scene when he's finally swinging in his new outfit and stuff. The song playing behind him. That is emotionally really satisfying, really incredible scene. The climax of this movie is very long, and it is could be too long, but it is just visually crazy with colors and very trippy, the background, and it is hard to describe. One of the most visually distinctive scenes in an American animated movie maybe ever. It is nuts, and the inciting incident is also nuts with the particle collider wave earlier in the movie, when we get that color thing throughout the city, right? The use of colors in the inciting incident and the climax are both pretty out there and fantastic. Those two, the scene when he's swinging, and then I mentioned already, but the intro to Miles in his room, that was one of the clips that still stands out to me, just going through his house, and just the introduction to him and how he interacts with his world and stuff before any of this ever comes into Spider-Man. Those would be, I guess, my favorites.
The only scene you didn't mention though that I really liked was the scene with his uncle when they were doing the graffiti in the subway.
That was really
I thought
good,
the time lapse thing. I just really liked it. Was like I said, it really made you feel for that relationship between them, and it was just really beautiful. All the graffiti going up on the wall, all the cans, and the spider slowly making its way towards him. I think that scene was really, really fun.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. That's fantastic. Also, we mentioned the Thwip one in the red tinted forest when they're
forest
swinging there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's a really incredible scene too.
Allie, do you have any moment in particular that stands out?
Well, just the interactions between was Peter B. Parker, the one who stays alive, and Miles. I'm glad that it was pretty, not consistent, but the fact that they never kind of lost that, not sentimentality, but you know what I mean. The way they interacted just was great. Animation in general was stunning. I love how they used the halftone panels to make it look like comic book pages. The no hyper realism, and it just blocks of colors that slipped off register, so it kind of looked like you were watching 3D, sort of, and it flowed a lot better than I thought it would. And I don't know, I mean, not to compare it to The Incredibles, but it felt like there was a overall, even though stuff, a lot of bad things happened, it felt like there was an overall tone of just optimism, which was really refreshing. Not so much for a Spider-Man movie, I guess, because it's a superhero movie, but they made it feel new, and obviously because it is new.
This was a surprisingly optimistic film for some of the stuff that happened in it.
Yeah.
There was some really dark stuff that happened.
Died.
Yeah.
Pretty shocking when you see Peter Parker get killed in the beginning.
I did not expect that. I also didn't expect Chris Pine to be voicing Peter Parker.
Oh, and he was the pretty boy Spider-Man. I loved it.
Yeah.
One thing I want to mention, unrelated, very racially diverse movie, but I was not, in terms of feminism, I was not super impressed with the use of female characters here. There are certainly some good ones we mentioned with Gwen and Doc Ock and Aunt May, but not much. Beyond that, with the mom is certainly less important than the male relationships with Miles, and it's a movie about Miles and his male relatives, but that would be something I'd be looking to see more from the sequel.
I think in the comics he's closer with his dad anyway, though.
But I think the change to making Doc Ock a woman really saves me on that front, Dylan, because Doc Ock is
it's a really powerful moment. Yeah,
I will say. That all that makes me think is that we need Silk in the next one.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be.
That's all we need. That's there you go. We just need Silk. We need some gay banter between her and Gwen. It'd be great.
Yes,
it'd be great.
And have Doc Ock be the
Gwen
villain.
Mary Jane. No, don't do that.
Yeah. But one final for me. There are two scenes that weren't mentioned, but that do stand out for me. Just to finish it off, one is the funeral scene where Mary Jane is talking to the crowd after Peter Parker died, and like everyone's wearing like the Spider-Man mask. Like I feel like that was like a very powerful thing, and she basically says the theme of this movie, which is that it doesn't matter who's under the mask. It's like about the thing. Like Andy, you were mentioning this. It's about the ideals and everything. She states it to everybody. So I think and it was a funny moment where Miles is like, she's talking about me, and then someone's like, no, she's not talking about
specifically
you. Not specifically you. That, and also I really like how when Spider-Gwen makes her introduction, it's mimicking the similar thing of how Gwen dies, which is she does like the thing, like they're falling and then she's the one who grabs them and saves them. And it's not like how Peter failed to save her. She does actually manage to do it. So I just thought that was also a neat little like thing where like if you catch it, you catch it.
I like that.
But yeah, I think that's it. Unless you have any final thoughts.
The last thing I want to say is I really like that each of the comic books, if I'm not mistaken, they had each comic book had the original creator of that character on them when they like said their origin story. Like you saw like the comic book for the original Spider-Man, it said Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and then you had like all the other. I unfortunately don't know all of them off the top of my head. But they had the original creators on their comic books. Like when Miles came out, it had the creator of Miles Morales on that comic book. And I think that was a great touch.
Yeah.
How dare you not know every single
I'm sorry. There's like too many.
Also, beautiful moment in like the credits for Stan Lee.
Yeah.
Moment there. Like that's moment of silence. And that was like that was the one time I was like, it's okay to clap. That was the one time. The only time I was like, okay, it's fine to actually give some sort of audience reaction. That's not laughter or shock or crying.
Speaking of, the credits are beautiful. Like the actual first half of the credits are really visually stunning.
They are. All right. That does it for us. You can find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. Support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Alec, aka Frozone. And thanks, as always, to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, and Hugh. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
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 Bye.